Welcome back to the deep dive. If you're listening to this, you're probably the kind of person who has, well, you've felt the ground shifting under your feet for a long time now.
Yeah, absolutely.
You walk into a meeting or a classroom or maybe even your own living room, and you get this feeling that the rules of engagement have just been completely rewritten.
Right, but nobody actually sent you the new manual.
Exactly. You just keep getting penalized for these infractions you didn't even know existed.
Yeah.
So today, we are going to look at a document that claims to be that missing manual.
And just a fair warning to everyone, it is not a polite guide to modern etiquette.
No, not at all. It's explicitly framed as a counterinsurgency manual for a war you might not even realize you're fighting, especially if you're a man trying to navigate modern society.
It's a really heavy text today. We're doing a deep dive into an ebook called Violence-Prone Emotional Terrorists, BPD Spectrum Women, Lesbians, Domestic Abusers, and Child Abusers.
Quite a title.
Yeah, it's by Conrad Riker. And when you use the word counterinsurgency just now, that is the exact terminology Riker uses. He essentially treats the modern cultural landscape as an active battlefield.
He sets that tone immediately, right?
Yeah.
He suggests there is this quiet war being waged against men. It's not being fought in trenches. It's fought in HR offices, family courts, media narratives.
It's the quiet desperation of suburban homes, as he puts it.
Yeah. Now, if you're listening, especially if you're part of the red-pilled or manosphere community, and you've ever felt like there is this systemic hostility toward masculinity, Riker's basically saying you aren't paranoid. You're just observant.
Right.
But before we get to the tactical analysis, and we are going to get really into the weeds today, I have a quick job for you, the listener.
A very important one.
Exactly. If you want this kind of unfiltered, deep analysis to keep coming, because let's face it, the algorithm usually tries to bury or demonetize this exact type of content, you need to like and subscribe right now.
Hit the button. It's the only way to tell the system that people actually want to hear all sides of the story. Engagement keeps the signal strong.
Because the algorithm favors safety, but we favor truth, or at least uncovering the arguments people are actually making. So let's set the mission for today. Riker has spent, 20 years analyzing the history of our institutions?
Yeah, about 2 decades looking at what he calls the rot inside the West, specifically focusing on the time before those institutions were, in his view, captured by feminists and Marxists.
And his central thesis is bold. He argues that what we broadly call leftism today isn't really a political stance about taxes or healthcare.
No, he claims it is literally the female psyche, externalized, scaled up, and weaponized against men.
Which is a massive claim. And just to be clear up front, our goal here is to impartially report on what's in this source material. We are endorsing these viewpoints, but we are going to unpack exactly what Rikers are doing because it's a fascinating, ultra-long, incisive analysis.
It really is. And to understand his claim, you have to look at how he defines that psyche. He isn't saying every individual woman is a leftist.
Right.
He's talking about specific psychological traits. Things like prioritizing safety over freedom, consensus-seeking behavior, and using social shaming as the primary enforcement mechanism.
He argues that those traits might be totally functional in a small, prehistoric family unit.
Exactly. But he says when you make them the operating system for a government or a trillion-dollar corporation, you end up with a totalitarian structure designed to crush masculine independence.
Now, this is a very dense book. It's loaded with charts, court cases, data. We're giving you the strategic overview today.
Yeah.
But if you really want the full arsenal,
The graphs on domestic violence, the legal precedents.
yeah, you need to go to Amazon Kindle or Google Play Books right now and buy Violence-Prone Emotional Terrorists. You are really going to want the source material in your hand to follow along with the scale of this argument.
Absolutely. So where should we start?
Let's start with the weapon system Riker identifies. If this is a war, what are the bullets? He introduces this concept called GSR.
Right, GSR. That stands for gossip, shaming, and rallying.
Break that down for us.
Well, Riker argues that evolutionarily, men engaged in direct conflict. If guys had a problem, they fought or argued, settled it, and moved on. High risk, high reward.
Right, it's out in the open.
But women, according to the book, evolved to use indirect aggression to manage the tribe. That is GSR.
Gossip, shaming, rallying.
Exactly. You whisper to destroy a reputation, which is the gossip. Then you socially isolate the target to make them vulnerable, that's the shame. And finally, you get the group to attack together so no single person takes the blame. That's the rally.
So in a village 5,000 years ago, that keeps people in line. But Riker's point is that we don't live in villages anymore.
No, we live in the GSR industrial complex. He says when you take that biological instinct and pair it with Twitter, TikTok, or a massive corporate HR department, it becomes a nuclear weapon.
A single accusation scales globally in minutes.
He uses the Aziz Ansari case from a few years back as the perfect example of this.
Oh, I remember that. That was everywhere.
By all legal accounts, the book points out, that was just a bad date. Signals were misread, it certainly wasn't a crime. But the GSR complex activated.
The narrative was spun, the shaming was deployed at scale.
Millions of people piling on. Riker calls it digital pack hunting. The goal was to destroy a career without a shred of due process. He says the hashtag #MenAreTrash operates on this exact same mechanism. It's not about truth.
It's about the dopamine hit of the rally, which leads to this environment where the punishment for any social infraction is total destruction. And Riker says this creates what he calls the emotional tax.
I think this is going to resonate with a lot of guys listening, especially in corporate jobs.
It's the toll men pay just to exist in these spaces. The energy you have to expend to preemptively manage the emotions of the women around you.
Walking on eggshells. You can't just state a fact anymore. You have to wrap it in validation and soft language so nobody feels unsafe. And Riker connects this directly to what he terms the BPD spectrum epidemic.
This part gets intense. He is literally linking modern political policy to borderline personality disorder.
He is, and he builds a very detailed case. He argues modern leftist ideology is essentially BPD writ large. Extreme emotional volatility, black and white thinking.
Where you're either a savior or a demon, no middle ground.
Right, and a terrifying fear of abandonment. Plus, a demand that others regulate your emotions for you. The philosophy of I feel, therefore it is.
So when a university demands a safe space because a speaker has a different opinion,
Or HR polices your tone instead of actual competence.
Riker says they are institutionalizing BPD traits. They're demanding the world rearrange itself to soothe emotional dysregulation.
And logic doesn't work there, because the book argues BPD is immune to logic. It operates on emotional reality.
Which is why bringing facts to a cancellation mob is basically suicide. You're bringing a calculator to a knife fight.
You lose every time. Now, usually when you hear the mainstream argument that men are the problem, or that toxic masculinity causes all domestic strife, the typical defense is just, no, we aren't.
But Riker does something much more analytical here. He looks for a control group.
This is arguably the most data-heavy part of the book. Scientifically, if the hypothesis is that men cause violence and toxicity, you have to test it by looking at relationships where there are no men.
Lesbian relationships.
Exactly. Riker uses them as a sociological petri dish. If the mainstream narrative is true, a relationship between two women should be an absolute utopia of empathy and peace. No toxic testosterone.
No mansplaining.
Right. But the results he cites are pretty devastating to that narrative. He pulls CDC data, not just blog posts, but Centers for Disease Control data showing that 43.8% of lesbians experience physical violence from a partner.
43.8%, that's almost half.
It's significantly higher than heterosexual women and nearly double the rate of violence in gay male relationships.
That is a crazy stat. If men were the biological source of violence, gay male relationships should be a war zone, and lesbian relationships should be completely peaceful.
But the data shows the exact opposite. And it's not just physical violence. He dives into the psychological climate, too. The dead bedroom stats.
Right, the lesbian bed death phenomenon.
Riker cites studies showing up to 78% of lesbian couples experience a dead bedroom, little to no sexual intimacy, after just a few years.
Compared to gay men, who he notes remain sexually active and report much higher relationship satisfaction and personal autonomy. So what's causing that collapse, according to the book?
He calls it fusion collapse. He argues that without a masculine presence, what he terms the male buffer, to introduce logic, perspective, or just de-escalate emotional spirals, the relationship collapses in on itself. Women tend toward enmeshment.
Merging identities.
Right. We are one.
Which sounds great until you disagree about groceries.
That's the almond milk anecdote he uses. It sounds ridiculous, but he uses it as a horror story of enmeshment. A couple has a massive apartment-threatening blowout because one of them forgot the almond milk.
Because in that state of fusion, forgetting milk isn't a logistical error.
No, it's processed as an emotional betrayal. It means you don't care about me. Whereas gay men, the book argues, prioritize autonomy. They have a problem, they fix it.
They mimic healthy masculinity.
Exactly. Riker's point with the control group is that what we often label as toxic masculinity, autonomy, stoicism, logic, is actually the glue keeping society functional. Remove it, and you get high violence and stagnation.
Okay, so if the female psyche creates this kind of instability in private, what happens when it captures our institutions? That brings us to the institutional capture segment.
This is where it hits daily life. He traces a timeline starting in education. He argues there's a literal war on masculine order in schools.
Boys are failing at record rates, and he says it's not an accident.
Right. He points out that schools in Oregon and the UK have banned the game of tag because it's deemed too aggressive.
I've seen those headlines. It's wild.
And curriculum designers, who are predominantly female, have removed masculine-coded learning. Math problems used to be about velocity and mechanics, things that interest boys spatially.
Now they're feeling-based. How would you feel if you shared these apples?
Yes, attempting to reprogram boys to process the world emotionally. And if a boy is fidgety or competitive,
He's pathologized. Drug for ADHD.
because the masculine instinct to move disrupts the feminine classroom model of sitting still for 7 hours. So these boys graduate, they hit the workforce, and they meet the final boss.
HR, human resources.
Riker notes that 70% of HR professionals are women, and he argues HR has morphed from a logistical department doing payroll into a political commissariat.
Focused entirely on belongingness and safety.
Emotional safety, which is weaponized. He uses the Google memo incident with James Damore as the archetype. Damore wrote a document suggesting biological differences might explain the gender gap in engineering.
He used logic. He cited studies.
And the response wasn't a debate. It was an execution via GSR. Gossip, shame, rally. He wasn't fired for being factually incorrect. He was fired for causing emotional harm.
Truth becomes subordinate to feeling. The leftist mind as female psyche externalized.
Right. And Riker argues this leads to competence rot. Planes falling out of the sky, software failing. Because we prioritize belonging over engineering standards, men effectively cannot lead if the primary metric is, did everyone feel good about my decision?
I want to pivot to the personal side, the war on fatherhood and economic survival. Because a lot of guys listening are dealing with family courts or just trying to stay afloat financially.
Riker calls this the maternal archetype weaponized. He looks at the tender years doctrine in family courts. Technically, it's supposed to be dead, but he argues the bias is baked into the system.
The divorce stats he brings up are intense.
Women initiate 70 to 80% of all divorces in the West. Yet they almost exclusively claim victimhood in the proceedings. Riker highlights the asymmetry. A woman can break up the family for irreconcilable differences, meaning she's just unhappy.
And the state rewards her with custody, child support, and alimony. The man loses his kids and assets for a contract breach he didn't commit.
It heavily incentivizes the destruction of the family unit. If you get paid to leave, you leave. And then there's the economic side. Riker introduces a concept called sheenflation.
Sheenflation, explain that one.
Well, women control roughly 80% of consumer spending, but they carry significantly more debt than men. Riker says they fall into the consumerist trap.
The whole I deserve it marketing angle.
Exactly. Spending becomes an emotional pacifier. A $3,000 handbag isn't for carrying things, it's for dopamine and status within the GSR network.
And so sheenflation is a result of that.
Yeah. Yes, an economy driven by female consumerism focuses on fast fashion, luxury brands, endless decor updates, high-margin, low-utility goods. It creates a bubble of fake value. Meanwhile, men work the dangerous infrastructure jobs to produce the resources backing that spending.
Men produce, the system encourages women to consume. There's also a controversial legal angle he touches on here, the hormonal hijack.
Oh, the hysterical alibi. Riker points out a rising trend where biological femmes like PMDD or the luteal phase are used as legal defenses for female violence. It wasn't me, it was my hormones.
But if a man said, I punched him because of my high testosterone, they'd throw the book at him.
Right, it's a massive double standard in the text. Female biology excuses bad behavior, but male biology is a weapon to be suppressed. Men are held responsible for their actions and women's emotional reactions.
So where does this all end? If schools pathologize boys, corporations fire truth tellers, courts incentivize divorce, and the economy is built on debt consumption, what's the end game?
Riker's final segment is literally called The Collapse of the West. He looks at demographics in feminist utopias like Sweden or Iceland. Egalitarian policies, but birth rates are crashing.
He calls it civilizational suicide.
He uses a brutal economic term. He claims that under modern feminism, women have become net negative economic agents.
Okay, unpack that because that's a heavy term.
His argument is that a society needs production resources, infrastructure, and reproduction. When women abandon the family unit for corporate email jobs, DEI consulting, administrative blow.
Roles that don't produce tangible value.
Right? He says they become tax consumers, not generators. They aren't reproducing, and they aren't producing essential resources. Plus, the state taxes the productive class, mostly men doing hard labor, to subsidize this administrative welfare state.
So you have a shrinking population, a shrinking productive workforce, and a massive class of administrative consumers.
It's mathematically terminal, according to Riker. The system eats itself unless there is a massive reassertion of masculine sovereignty.
He's saying the system isn't broken. It's functioning exactly as designed to extract resources from men.
And keep them compliant by demonizing them. He believes a hard reset is coming because reality bats last. You can ignore biology and economics for a while, but eventually the power grid fails.
So this book is really handing the reader a pair of glasses to see the matrix.
It's the ultimate red pill. Once you grasp GSR, you'll see the rally forming on Twitter, and you'll know not to engage. Once you see the control group data, you can't accept the lie that men are the root of domestic toxicity.
You look at a couple fighting over almond milk and think, fusion collapse.
Exactly.
And that is why you can't just listen to this deep dive and move on. We've hit the highlights, but the data in violence-prone emotional terrorists is weapon grade. You need the charts and citations to arm yourself.
You really do.
Go to Amazon Kindle or Google Play Books right now. Buy the book. Support Conrad Riker because he's doing the analytical work most researchers are terrified to touch.
And I want to leave the listener with one final provocative thought that builds on all this.
Go for it.
Riker presents the lesbian relationship as the control group, a world without men. And that control group, per the CDC, is fraught with higher violence and instability. So, if the world without men actually looks like chaos, what does that say about the future of a society systematically trying to remove male influence from every single hall of power?
That is the ultimate question. Are we heading toward utopia or a burning apartment over a carton of almond milk?
The data suggests the fire's already started.
Make sure you follow the author for more. Go to Substack and follow @Conrad Riker. Do it right now to get the updates we can't always share here.
Knowledge really is the only shield you have.
And if you want us to keep bringing you these deep dives, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, and share this with a friend who needs to hear it. Thanks for listening. Keep your eyes open, and we'll see you next time.